Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's episode of Canal Days. As always, I'm your host Carrie, along with my co-host, founder of Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Camus. Our Canal Days series delves into the vast collection of historical sites throughout Massachusetts, with Robert's expertise of local history as our personal guide. Each episode, we uncover history throughout local communities, highlighting the historic landmarks and uncovering their seminal significance. Today's episode of Canal Days will be discussing the Pelham cemeteries of Massachusetts. So, enumerate the cemeteries within Pelham, Massachusetts.
There's quite a few of them. It's a very complex town for cemeteries. When I do these types of presentations, I talk about all denominations. When it's in the Protestant denomination, here it's very important to talk about the Presbyterians and the Congregationalists. But also, of course, there's Catholic, Jewish, Native Americans, so forth. So those are easy. The Catholics of Pelham would not be buried in Pelham. They would be buried in the cemetery in Hadley, which they were assigned to, the St. Bridget's Cemetery. The St. Bridget's Church was in Amherst, and they would have been brought all the way there to 2 towns away. That's because they didn't have a Catholic church for Pelham. It was always too small. The Jewish people would have been buried in the Jewish cemetery in Northampton. Native Americans, as far as I know, no one has been found yet. And that's because most of Pelham has not been excavated. And there's a lot of Protestant cemeteries. There used to be more. Pelham used to be bigger. It used to have the southern part of what was called Prescott, belonged to Pelham, and it lost some cemeteries, and then during the Quabbin construction at the time, there was a lot of changes made. So the cemeteries of Pelham are Arnold Burial Ground, the Bobbinville Burial Ground, which is not there anymore, the Harkness Cemetery, the Knight's Corner Burial Ground, the Pelham Hill Cemetery, which is the oldest of them all, the Pelham Hollow Road Cemetery, which is not there anymore, the Quaker Burial Ground, the Joe Rhodes Burial Site, where the stone is there, but his body has been moved, the Reuben Allen Cemetery up on Mount Lincoln, about a mile from any road, the Stevens Cemetery, the Valley Cemetery, which is the most active of all in recent years, the West Burial Ground. There used to be also the Packard Cemetery, the Packardville Cemetery, and the Packardville Church Cemetery. And amazingly, I'm going to try to go through this as much as possible, but check out the podcast, video, and website that I have, holyokecanaltour.org, to see much more on each one of these cemeteries, and pictures and explanations of this complex subject.
And detail the ones that are the most interesting.
Oh, so interesting is, well, they're all very interesting in their own way. Of course, the Arnold Burial Ground is about a quarter mile into the woods, far away from any roads. It was probably the back of the Arnold farm, and there was no road near that. The Bobbinville Cemetery is long gone. The Knight's Corner Cemetery has probably the most interesting gravestone in all of Belchtown, about a man supposedly killed by his wife, poisoned by him, and made to look like an oyster, bacteria death. The Pelham Hollow one is gone too. The Quaker Burial Ground, also deep in the woods, no stones except these field stones that are shaped a little bit, I think. So that's quite different. Then I told you about the Reuben Allen Cemetery, made by the Allen family because their daughter had smallpox. The town would not allow a smallpox victim buried in any of the town's cemetery, and so he made one on his property in 1853. And it's a mile into the woods. Can you imagine to walk a mile to reach the cemetery? Right? Then there there are other lost ones, the Packardville one I told you about. The Valley one has a tomb within it where you can actually peek into the tomb because you can open up like 2 to 3 inches and see what's in the bottom of the tomb nowadays. And then there's one that's made for one person only, the Joe Rhodes burial site. He also was a smallpox victim. He was buried on the back corner of his farm. He used to be on the road that went through Pelham north to south. He used to be on the east side of that road. But when the major highway of 202 was made in 1938, it was made straighter, and his body was then found on the west side of the highway. And it's still there, even though they moved his body in 1938. They left a gravestone behind. So I'm going to explain much more about that when I reach his podcast just for him. And I visited his stone, so you can see that on my page. We're going to also talk about today a couple of very interesting ones in great detail, including the Pelham Hill Cemetery and more about the Quaker Cemetery. So let's go to our break.
And we'll be right back after this quick announcement. Are you fascinated by local history and eager to investigate the obscure treasures off the beaten path throughout the state of Massachusetts? Or maybe just seeking an unforgettable cultural activity for family and friends to enjoy? Look no further than Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, founded by Robert Camus. With over a decade of experience, Robert offers captivating tours and presentations of historic sites and landmarks throughout the state. Whether you're interested in canals, cemeteries, charming churches, or more, Robert's tours provide a unique and enriching experience for all. And that's not it. You can also schedule private tours tailored to your interests, ensuring a personalized adventure and unforgettable memories. Perfect for families or groups of all sizes, making for an exciting hands-on learning experience that brings history to life. Simply visit holyokecanaltour.org or email bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com to book your private tour today. So, getting back to our episode on the Pelham cemeteries in Pelham, Massachusetts. Acquaint us with the Pelham Hill Cemetery.
This is the oldest cemetery in Pelham. It is probably filled up, and its gravestones are quite particular. They are just field stones because the people of Pelham were too poor and also too far away from the Connecticut River Valley to have brownstone or limestone slabs shipped up there to make gravestones for themselves in most cases, but not in all cases. The two first ministers of the Presbyterian Church that used to be in Pelham have the second one has carved gravestone. The first one probably did too, but it was lost. So he's a plaque on a rock. So it's a very unique cemetery because most people in it don't have names on the gravestones at all. There's a beautiful stone wall around it that partly had to be moved when Route 202 was put in. So some of the burials were moved to the back. There is very close to it the oldest continuous used meeting house, at least in Massachusetts, probably in the rest of the country too. It's from like the 1750s, 1738 I think. It's very old. And there's also a church right next to it. And since the other side of Route 202 has been sculpted away to make the Quabbin Reservoir, you have a decent view downwards of at least some of from the Quabbin in a lookout further up the road. So it's quite a unique looking place.
And familiarize us with the Quaker Cemetery.
Alright, the Quaker Cemetery, quite unique. It's into the woods about 100 yards or so. And if you know the park, go in, stay on the trail towards the right, and then look towards the right, and you'll find a clearing where there are field stones put at the head of the person, and you see depressions into the ground of where the coffins have collapsed. The cemetery was made in 1808. So it's one of those cemeteries where you don't have inscribed names on the stone, and they wanted to treat everyone the same. When a father tried to have one made for his son, who was a medical doctor, when that son died, he put one up, and the Quakers took it down. The father put another one up. Quakers took it down. So the father had the burial of it moved into the Arnold Cemetery, which is 300 yards away. And so, thus, this cemetery is without any inscribed stones. And it's all for the Quakers. And that itself is very rare.
Yep. And thank you for joining us for our episode on the Pelham cemeteries of Pelham, Massachusetts, and joining us on our journey through the rich history of the Connecticut River Valley. We hope you enjoyed uncovering some of the hidden and overlooked marvels and their fascinating stories that shaped our past in the state of Massachusetts. A special thanks to Robert Camus, founder of Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, for sharing his passion and expertise with us. Remember, you can find more information about Robert's tours, book private tours, and explore the Canal Days video and podcast series at holyokecanaltour.org. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please like, comment, and share. We'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions for future episodes. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to tune to our next episode of Canal Days. Until next time.